Okay, so for today's question, what we're going to do basically is the 2016 question. So what you're going to do first is go through your papers that we give to you just before the break, before we went on break, and basically look for the 2016 one for the ordinary level. So make sure it's the ordinary level. It should look like this when we flip it over. There's obviously short questions inside, which we're not going to worry about for today. And what we're going to do is we're going to take our T-square and we're going to stick that on. Okay, so I fold it in half. I'm going to stick that on, and what I've done is I've leveled off the road with my T-square. Okay, so that's a little bit crooked. Let me straighten that up there. Okay, so I'm happy enough with that. And what we'll do then is basically we'll take our papers. Okay, and it was 2016 and it was ordinary level, so they're towards the back. There's a little tab here, which is quite useful, that makes it a bit easier. And the way we know the roads question typically, or the information for the roads question, is that if you flick it on and you look for the question that has mainly writing, and then often there's no picture, or if it does have a picture, it usually has, it's not a picture that you could draw necessarily. I'm just trying to see if there's one here. Yeah, it may have a picture like this to go along with it, but it's not something typical like one of these that you can draw. So this is basically our information. So what it asks for is two different parts. We're going to try to do the two parts in the one video. So it says on the drawing supply, draw a vertical section on the line AB. So vertical section or a profile, which we need to know that word, on the line AB. And then it says CD is the central line of the proposed roadway with an altitude of 35, and the side slopes for both the embankments and the cutting are 1:1. So that's a ratio. So what we'll do is we'll do the profile first. We'll come back then briefly to part B afterwards. So the profile is always going to come up. Judge, the roadway may or may not come up, but so far in all the questions in the 10 years that has been given, the roads have sometimes come up, but the profile always has come up. So what we'll do first is literally we draw some light lines here because we're looking straight on here, and basically what we need to do is draw an elevation. This is basically a plan view. So if you imagine you got your maps out from your geography question, when you're looking down on a map, you're basically looking down from a bird's eye view from straight above, and this is the same thing. And then this space that they've left here is space for you to draw an elevation view of what the mountain would look like, or the view would look like if you looked like that. Let me see, does that darken up enough? We might darken it down a small bit just to see it a bit better for the projector. Okay, so that looks pretty okay. So these heights here, this is where it's important, would typically be measured from here. So I would usually put 0 line here and measure up 20. I'm not too worried if it goes up across my drawing, right? So this will be the most important thing. 20, 15, 15, 20, 25. So hopefully you can see that there. I'm literally measuring the same distances here. Sometimes people will draw grids across it, which is fine, but sometimes that can get a little bit confusing, I find, but it's personal preference. Both are a perfectly acceptable method. 50, and then we need 50 more here, 45, and 40. So what I've got there is a series of points, and I use the measurements that I've given. So a profile is basically, well, what does it look like at that point, right? Or basically if I cut through it, so what would that hill look like? So you should get a series of contours. Now, ideally, if you're doing this, make sure that the examiner can see those dots. So when I've got over them with the purple, it's a little bit hard to see my original marks that were there. So that's basically my profile. That's part A done. Well, if we look back at part B then talks about the road, and what it says is basically the road height has an altitude of 35, and it says 1:1 for embankments and 1:1 for cuttings. So what we'll do is we'll write that information on the side. So road height, and this is a good idea, so at least you have it if you're looking back over it for revision, equals 35. Now cut equals 1:1. And embankments is something that we're not used to referring to it. We usually refer to it as fill. So embankments are basically banks that you build up, so 1:1 as well. So what we're going to do is we need to look at, well, what's the gap between our contours? Now the gap here is 5. They've never given one so far at ordinary level where they've changed the gap, but there's nothing to say they couldn't. So basically what you do is basically you look at, well, what's the gap between them, and then you multiply that out. So it's 5 is to 5, because it's the same thing. If it was 1.5, you multiply 5 by 1.5. If it was 2, you multiply 5 by 2. But in this case, they're both 1 is to 1, which makes it nice and easy, and 5 is to 5. So again, what I would do here is just make sure cut, highlight the 5, fill, and highlight the 5. So it's that 5 is our important number. So if we look down at our road here, the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to put an X where I don't have to do anything. So the road is meant to be 35 when it's finished. So at this point, if I brought in a digger straight away, that's the only place the digger has no work to do. At that point, it's exactly the right height. The land is exactly the right height. That's what we need to do. So what we're going to do is maybe we'll do cut first. So if we look here, we need to see, well, what side is cut. So cut is going to be where the digger has to cut in. So these heights here are above where the road wants to be. So basically a digger will have to come in and cut out the earth that's above it to give space for the road. So what we know is the gap for cut is 5. So we'll go 5, 10, 15, 20, and that might be enough. And what we'll do is we'll just draw a light line up here, and we'll keep our cut to the left. Okay. Now this is the bit where sometimes students get confused. The first measurement that we write on our road is basically whatever the height of the road is. So in this case 35. Then we have 40, 45, 50, and potentially 55. Now if you went the wrong way, you should cop that. If say you went 35 and then 30, you should notice that the numbers are below you. So what we'll do now is basically we'll see where they intersect. So we're 40, the red line crossing hits 40, the contour at that point. 45, 50. Now I don't have a 55. And then I have a 45. So it's not unusual for it to go up and then come back down. Okay, so the important thing is that you just don't keep going up. So there we go. And the last thing that we should have done is written cut here. Okay, so my red and my purple side, that's going to be my cut side. So what I'm going to do is I'm now going to do fill. Now in this case, both were the same. So I'll just measure out the 5s again. 5, 10, 15, 20. Okay, now my lines might look a little bit different sometimes, or the gaps might look smaller. That's just got to do with the thickness of the marker, causing a little bit of problems with being perfectly accurate. And we may or may not have enough there. I think we might be one short, but we'll see anyway. So we write 35 again on the edge of the road. So which one will this be? This will be 30, 25, 20, 15. And if I look there, there's no other numbers I have. If I needed an extra one, I just add on an extra one. So what we're going to do is again just intersect them. So where does 30 and 30 cross? Here we go. 25 and 25. There we go. 20 and 20. 15 and 15. And again, then we start to come back down. 20, 25, 30. And then again, just watch this, because then it actually goes back out again. My T-square must be a little bit crooked. Maybe my page wasn't 100% straight, because it's actually getting a bit wider here, which it shouldn't. It should be perfectly parallel. But that's just a small inaccuracy on my behalf. So I actually think I may need 10, because when I get as far as here, I can see I actually have a 10 mark here. So I'll need another line. And we'll write 10 on that. Okay, so this would be basically the shape of what I get. And this is a good question, because not all of them have cut and fill. Some of them only have one. And not all of them have this sort of system when it curves away from the road, then back in, and then back away from the road. Right, so the last step then is basically write fill. And in that case, that's the whole question done. I don't think there was any other bit to it. No. And if you look at it, the good trick to see, well, have you done it correct? Does the top look roughly the same as this? Sort of like a mirror image, but wouldn't be exact, but sort of close. It does. Does it look sort of similar here as it does here? Yes, it does. So we're happy enough with that. And that's that question completed.